Hey y'all, welcome back to The Crazy. It's Leslie with Fat Cat Flossing, and I have had several people ask me about doing a tutorial, and the only thing I feel confident enough to do a tutorial about is making pen pillows. And I will freely admit that I have gotten a lot of my ideas and everything from other people, including Vanna Pfeiffer, the Twisted Stitcher, Artie, the Vintage Stitcher, and Helen, East Coast Crafter, and a bunch of other folks. And I will try to link, a list of other folks' tutorials in the show notes. But anyway, this is my second go round at doing this. I tried to do it yesterday and talked to myself for an hour until I discovered that I hadn't hit record. So it's going to be a little bit more limited today because I sewed up almost all my pen pillows yesterday, so I have less to demonstrate. But we're going to give it a go. So anyway, let me put this to the side. And the first thing you want to do is choose your fabric. This is a little patriotic design from Brenda Gervais, whatever the summer patriotic booklet was from last year. It's a great little booklet. I recommend you get it. And I'll also try to mention that in the show notes. But the first thing you want to do is pick some coordinating fabric. And I'm going to do two fabrics because I'm going to do a contrasting line like I have done on this pillow, where I've used the main color here and then this band here. And I'm really hoping this is recording, y'all. Yay, it is. Okay, so you've got your piece, and I frequently recommend using layer cakes. And hold on one second, because I put them up. I had them out yesterday. Layer cakes are 10-inch squares of quilting cottons from any given fabric line. And they're just various and sundry fabrics in that line. And that's, if you check eBay and clearance at some of the different fabric vendors, you can find those at pretty reasonable prices. And they'll give you anywhere from 20 to 40 various cuts of fabric. And the price can range from as low as 10 or 12 bucks up to 40 plus. But if you catch them on sale, they're a great deal, and they're a good way to build your stash without buying actual yardage. Unfortunately, I don't have a layer cake that has any kind of patriotic print in it, so I have gone to my stash of other fabric cuts and pulled out some stuff that I thought might work. And I'm just going to go through those and see what I see. And I think I like that. And then I want some kind of little contrast band. That's a possibility. I think I like that better. Wrong blue. That could work, but I would need to get rid of this. No, like the other one better. But you just go through, and I kind of like that. I think that's going to be my winner. I think I like that better than this. Yep, that's what I'm going to use. Okay. So the next thing you're going to do is decide how large you want this to be. I'm going to finish this as a little taller pillow that stands up straight. Let me see if I've got an example of one of those. It will be similar to this one, but I'm going to have it standing up vertically. So, but this part of it, I typically cut around anywhere from a ½ inch to an inch margin around all of these. It just depends on kind of what look I am going for. But on this is teeny tiny, so I want it to be just a little bit bigger. So I've got my ruler, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up an inch outside the stitched area on all of these. And what I'm lining up to is this right here, but there is so little to that I'm afraid I won't cut straight. So I'm actually going to come and line up on the edge of the water can. And then I've got my rotary cutter. Double check, hold firmly, because if you don't, it will slip as you cut and then you'll cut crooked. Press firmly and cut. And again, I'm cutting a 1-inch margin. You can do it closer or further out, you know, whatever floats your boat on that. Now I'm cutting 1 inch from the top of the flower here, and I'm actually lining up this line down here, making sure it doesn't slip. Hold it firmly and cut. I need to put a new rotary blade on this. I should have done that before I started, but you know, shoulda, coulda, woulda. And again, I'm coming to the edge of the eagle, and I'm actually going to line up on that watering can there because it gives me a more surface area to line up against to make sure that it's straight. And now I'm coming 1 inch from the bottom of the watering can. Okay, so there's my finished piece, or well, my cut piece, I guess. The next thing I do is I typically put interfacing on the front of these. I use a lightweight fusible interfacing. I'm not going to cut the interfacing quite yet, and I'll tell you why in just a second. So I've got my piece here, and then I want to cut. This is going to be my main bottom fabric. And basically what I'm going to do is cut a piece the same size as this to be the bottom of the pillow. Now there is a selvage edge on this. So the first thing I'm going to do is take off that selvage. I'm not worried about being exact with that. And I'm going to put my little piece on here and line it up. I know that edge I just cut is straight. Notice this is not straight. Fabric stores, the people there, they're busy. They're trying to get as much done as quickly as possible. And they cut with scissors instead of a rotary cutter and a ruler. And they are frequently very inexact. Would be the nicest way I can think of to put that. So don't trust that your cut edge from there is going to be straight, because it most likely is not. So again, I've got this lined up over here. I just cut that. I know it's straight. I'm going to line up right here. Take that off because I don't want to cut it. Do this. Use it again to approximate my size. And again, I don't trust this top edge, so I'm going to be straightening that up in a minute. Now, I did not cut quite far enough down here, so I'm going to go down a little further. And y'all, pardon me while I fiddle with it. Bring my straight edge back. Should have changed out my blade. Okay, get that out of the way. Now, I did not, like I said, I don't trust that edge from the fabric shop. And by the way, if I see them cut it crooked in the store, I'm paying for it, and I will make them recut it if it's grossly inaccurate. And if I notice that the cut, when I take a bolt of fabric up to be cut, I will look at the edge, and if it's really uneven, I will ask them to even it up, or to give me 1 inch extra or whatever I need to do to compensate for that. So, okay, there's that fabric. And then decided I was going to do this as the contrast. And for this, I just need a little bitty piece because we're just doing that little band there. So, same thing, I'm going to take off the selvage edge. And by the way, y'all, here's a tip. It's my little trash box. I used to watch Rachel Ray all the time. She the cooking shows, and she always had a trash bowl on her counter that she threw things into, and it saves having to go back and forth to the trash can all the time. And I thought that was a great idea. So I have my little trash box on my desk, and at the end of the day, I'll empty it into the trash can, which is behind me. But it saves me turning around and going across the room to that. Now this, I only need about this much, so I'm just going to get my width here. And I'm going to cut it. I'm leaving myself some extra because I don't trust that the edge is straight. And I don't know if you saw there, my ruler slipped. So you have to be cautious of that. Okay, I don't need quite this much, so I'm going to square this up a little bit. Dang it, every time I touch it, it moves. Okay, then what I would do is take this over to the ironing board, fold it in half, and press it like this. I'm not going to go iron it right this minute. Then I would line it up where I want it to come to on here, which would be about right there. I would pin it in place, and I would sew a seam down here below where I want my pillow to join up. So here's one that I have done with this, and I've used white thread so you could see it. So I've just sewn a seam straight across here. So we're done with this one. We're going to put this guy aside for the moment. This is my other fabric for this one. What I'm going to do is put these two edges together where I want that to line up. I'm going to sew another seam. Let's see, where's my straight edge? I'm going to sew another seam, and I typically use about a 1/4 inch allowance. So I'm going to sew another seam right here. And then when I press this open, this is what I'm going to be left with. And then once I've got this all put together, I will cut my interfacing to this size. You also have to cut a piece for the back. And I did this yesterday when I was demonstrating. Again, once I've got this interfaced and I know it's the size that I want it to be, I'm going to lay it on here and cut this to be the same size as that. Then, when that's all put together, and I'm sorry, y'all, I did this yesterday and it didn't record, so I don't have as many pieces to demo with today. Then, once you've got it, all your pieces interfaced and put together, you put the pretty sides together. So you're going to put your stitching with the attached fabric up against the back, and then you're going to sew in a U shape all the way around. I like to give myself a 1/2 inch plus of seam before where I leave it open to stuff it through. Now you can sew all the way around, cut the back of your fabric, stuff it through the back, and then put a patch on it. There are people that do that. That's just not what I like to do, but it's just a matter of personal preference. One thing I do that you can no longer see on this because I trimmed the corners yesterday is when I'm sewing these seams, I go all the way to the edge and back. All the way to the edge and back, which reinforces my corners, because once you're done sewing it like that, and again, you've left an opening to stuff through, you get your scissors and clip your corners right up to, but not into, your stitched corner square there. That's why I reinforce it, to make those corners a little stronger, because, you know, it's going to be the weakest spot there, so because you're trimming it, so you want to reinforce it a little bit. So I just sew to the edge, back up, sew to the edge, go, sew to the edge, back up, sew to the edge, and so on, all the way around. Once you've done that and you've clipped the corners, then you're going to turn it inside out. And I turned this one yesterday, so it's going to turn pretty easily. Oh, and by the way, you'll notice that there is interfacing now on this one because, again, I did this yesterday. So you turn it inside out. It's a little more difficult to turn the first time. This one's going to turn pretty easily because it's been turned before. So you get the majority of it turned around. And then you get whatever version of pokey thing that you want to use. This comes in the bag of batting. My personal preference is for a large knitting needle. And then I take it and run it down the seam and into the corner, up the seam, into the corner, trying to get that corner as square as I can. And I'm going to repeat that on all 4 corners. You do have to be careful, and in this particular instance, the blunt stick may be better, because if you are not careful, you can poke that right through your fabric. Ask me how I know, because I've done it. So same thing, going to up and down the seam here to get into the corner, and I don't like that corner. I'm going to poke at it a little more aggressively, and hopefully I don't poke through the fabric. Okay. Oh, y'all give me just a second. I am going to turn on my iron, which I've covered up with all kinds of stuff. So anyway, turn the iron on and let it heat while I'm finishing this. Again, I'm just getting my corners poked out as squarely as I can. Just running that knitting needle point down the seams and into the corner, trying to get them to be nice and square. Okay, I think that's pretty good. Now what you want to do is turn in your fabric to where it's going to close up to. Just sometimes something of a fight to get it even. And then kind of, if that looks good like you want it to look, I usually kind of finger press it a little bit, and then I'm going to take it over to the iron and iron it, because this is going to be my last chance to iron the pillow as is. So stand by. And I do typically, I'm ironing on a cotton setting, and I am using steam for this, because I want it to be very crisp on those edges. Turn my iron off because we're done with that. And here it is ironed. And I like the way that looks. I think my corners look pretty good. They're not perfect. This one is a little blunt. Stick that knitting needle back in there. That may be about as good as I can get that one without poking a hole in it. Okay, so when you're at this point, then you're ready to stuff it. Stuff it, y'all. And I use batting. People use all kinds of different things. I know people who use sawdust. A lot of people use what's called lizard litter, which is crushed walnut shells typically. Some people, I've even known people who use sand. I've known people who use rice. I'm lazy. Batting is easy. It's relatively inexpensive, and that's what I use. And you want to do, this is what Vanna calls lofting the batting. And what you're doing is just pulling it apart into small pieces so it's not bunched up, and it'll give you a better, more even feel on the pillow. I hate doing this with a bloody purple passion, but I do it anyway because Vanna said to. This is, you know, I need to like put on TV and watch TV while I'm doing it or something, because boring. But you're just pulling it apart into small pieces, making sure that it's not compacted into like harder spots. And however much you think you're going to need, you're probably going to need more than that. So you just keep pulling it apart. Like, see right there where there's fibers that haven't been separated. If you see those, just kind of sort them out. All right, that's a relatively small pillow, so we're gonna hope that I've done enough, because I hate doing it. Okay. Now, this is a trick that I got from Artie, the vintage stitcher. This is lightweight cotton batting. I use it when I make the little kitty quilts for my kittens, because I send one home with each one of them, so they have something that smells like home. Sorry, let me get stuff sort of out of the way. Anyway, what I'm going to do is cut some little squares like this. And they don't need to be very big, you know, a couple inches or so. And then I'm going to take this and my knitting needle, and I'm going to wrap this around and stick this in these corners. And what this does is it provides a little bit more structure in those corners. My corners tend to get flat. I don't get my batting down in there well. So if you do this, it's sometimes difficult to get it where you want it to go. But what you want to do is get it into that corner. Which can be frustrating. And it's harder on when you've got a deeper width to go through like this one. And for some reason it's just hanging up on my fabric in there. Poopity. Pip poppity poop. There we go. Okay, get down in there. There we go. And then into these corners down here also. And these can be a little tricky because I don't have a whole lot of corner sewn shut. But I'm gonna kind of do this one with my hand. And I want to get it, see the seam allowance there? I'm gonna try to kind of get it under that seam allowance so it'll stay there a little bit better. But again, what you want to do is just get some fullness into those corners. Like that. And then you start stuffing. And you just poke the stuffing in. If you use, I may leave that one till the end. If you use lizard litter or sawdust or sand or something like that, you can kind of pour it in. But again, I just make a mess when I do those, so that's not my preference. But when you do use those, they give you a nice feel to the pillow. It has more heft, more weight. Mine are just kind of floofy. I'm still making sure that batting is down in my corner. I'm gonna get my pokey thing and poke at it and get it in there pretty firmly. And sometimes the end of the knitting needle works well for that. So you see, I thought I had that full, but once I've settled it down, there's still quite a bit of my pillow left to stuff. So keep stuffing. When I first got into showing cats, my mentor was explaining to me how to do a show bath. And her thing was, after you've soaped them up and bathed them, you want to rinse them and rinse them and rinse them and rinse them. And when you think that you've got all the soap rinsed out, then you want to rinse it again. And then you want to rinse it again to get all the, make sure you got all the soap out. Because if you leave the soap in, they look clumpy. Their coat doesn't look good. So anyway, it's kind of like this. Whenever you think you're done, you keep going because there's more. I thought I had too much batting over here, but it's going to take every bit of it, I think. Okay. Now I'm going to come back with my little thing that I left out of this one corner. Kind of try to tuck it up in there. And then stick my batting in to kind of hold it in place. And let me shove this down in there and see what I think. Okay, I could stuff some more in there. But I think we're pretty close to where I want it to be. I'm stuffing those corners. That's what I'm doing. So, we're at the point where I'm ready to sew it up. And got my, this is an actual pin pillow here. I have got my thread ready to go. What I use, this is upholstery thread. It is a thicker, heavier thread. You would not want to use it like, I guess you could in your sewing machine if you had a heavy duty machine. I don't think my machine would handle it very well. But it is a much heavier, more sturdy thread. And the reason I use this is when you do the ladder stitch, like I'm going to do to sew this up, I tug pretty firmly on it. And I've broken thread before, which is why I've switched to this. So I've threaded my needle. It's a double thread, tied my knot, and I'm going to come down here and come inside. And I'm sorry, I tend to hold this close to me when I do it typically, so it's more difficult for me to do it away from my body. So y'all bear with me. And I'm going to come from inside and pull my knot up firmly there. Now, I'm right-handed. It's easier for me to stitch right to left. So you've got some little threads coming out right there. I'm going to use what's called a ladder stitch to close this up. And to do a ladder stitch, you take a bite on the far side. And I use probably a 1/16 to an 1/8 of an inch measurement for this. And you come back to the far side, or the closer side to you, and you take another bite. And you're just going to go side to side. And I hope y'all can see this. I apologize if the view is not great, but I have to be able to see it too to do it. Y'all, I have to tell you, I was so frustrated yesterday when I did all this and figured out that it didn't record, because I spent almost 25 years working as an RN, and part of that, I was a critical care educator, and I taught things like, you know, emergency pharmacology, cardiac arrhythmias, trauma resuscitation, blah, 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 obstetric emergencies, all that kind of good stuff. And I would sometimes lecture to groups of 100 to 200 people because I did some traveling and lecturing. And I was not intimidated by doing that, me and my little PowerPoint presentations. But I have to tell you, I was more intimidated by doing this. And I was most unhappy when I figured out that it had not recorded and I needed to do it again. Most unhappy. So you get the idea. You just go right to left or right to left or back and forth, a bite on this side, a bite on that side. And as you pull it then, and this is why I use the upholstery thread, it will come together, and as it'll even out. It won't look all puckery. I've got a little thread sticking out from my seam inside. I'll just trim that. So, but you go one side and then the other. And again, you're taking just a small bite of that on each side. And sometimes you get where one thread doesn't pull through and you have to pull on the other one. There we go. I am not an expert finisher. I am mediocre probably at best. If I have anything I really care about, I'll send it to Vanna or to Faye Rigsby. But these are not like heirloom quality pieces. These are just little decorative pillows for me to have around my house. So my budget doesn't run to paying somebody else to finish most of the stuff. Although I would much rather stitch than finish. I don't find this particularly enjoyable. It's just kind of necessary if I want to see my stitching around my house. And I'm probably more of a process stitcher than a product stitcher, but I do enjoy seeing the fruits of my labor as they're done. Okay, so that's the ladder stitch. And again, when you're ready, you pull to close it up. When I get all the way down to the end, instead of actually tying a knot, I will just weave this back down a little ways, and that will, you know, I've never had one come apart. These are not subject to hard usage. So that's the ladder stitch. I'll finish that up in a minute. Okay, what's next? Trim. You can trim your pillows or not. I didn't used to trim most of mine, but I've now fallen in love with the various and sundry trims that are available. This is a mini pom-pom. This one was from Lady Dot. I did this one yesterday. Y'all, I am intrinsically lazy and I do not sew my trim on. You certainly can, and it's probably better to do it. But again, this is not the part of our craft that I enjoy. I enjoy the actual cross stitching. So I have sewn trims on. I didn't enjoy it. I don't want to do it. My best buddy is Aileen's tacky glue. This is a trick I learned from Vanna also. I store mine upside down. This is a glass thingy, which was, I don't know, $7 or $8 at, at Hobby Lobby. But that keeps the glue down in the bottom, so you're not constantly trying to shake it down as you're working. So once you've completed your pillow, and I guess if I want something to trim, I'm gonna have to finish sewing that one up, aren't I? Boop. See, I had all of these yesterday to do, and, or you know what? Hold on. We'll use one of these I did last year. This is another Brenda Gervais. It's from the Easter, I think she called it Easter Parade booklet. Super cute little piece. At the time, I didn't have any trim, and I didn't trim this one, so I think I'm going to put some trim on it. So let's see what I've got that might match that. All of my trim is in a tub here. So I think that orange is not orange enough. I think that fat chenille is too fat for it. I don't think that's quite the right blue. Hey, this one may work. Here's another blue also. Still not the right blue. Another pink. And a purple. Now I've got a purple fabric on there. Sorry, I'm having an avalanche of trim. Let me put some of this stuff back up. So I think my choices are, or my preferences so far, are either the purple or the yellow. So let's see what those look like. There's the yellow. It looks cute with the chicks, but I don't really like it up. This is Vintage Country Mocha, and I'm not crazy about it up against that. Let's try the purple. Assuming I can get it unwrapped, which may be iffy. I ordered these little things from a shop on Etsy. They were extremely reasonable, but I will tell you a trick, and I have used it. I just don't have the right color yarn for this. But chenille yarn, if you don't want to pay for hand-dyed prices, for what you can pay for $3, for 3 yards of hand-dyed chenille trim, you can pretty much go to Joann's or Hobby Lobby, especially if you catch a sale, and buy a whole skein of yarn. That's basically the same thing. It's just machine dyed, not hand dyed. Okay, I think I like, and I'm pretty sure that's what this is. I do not believe this is hand dyed. I believe this is chenille yarn. And that's fine. I don't care. I'm not a snob about that. So I think I like the purple on there. So that's what I'm going to use. And what I'm going to do is start around a corner. And I'm just basically measuring how much of this I'm going to need. Okay. I think that's plenty. I measure pretty generously with this. Chenille especially is pretty forgiving about where you join. So if you cut it a little short, you can add more in, but you know, if you don't have to. But I always leave myself usually about another inch or so. And what I do at this point is take my Aleene's and take off the, and try not to flip it up, because if you flip it up, then it runs away from the tip and becomes more difficult. Take it off, and I know this is blasphemy for a lot of people, but you know, for me, it is what it is. And you're just going to run a bead, a light bead of Aleene's right along the seam. I'll be done in about 15 minutes, honey.
Oh, Leslie said she'd be done in how long?
About 15 minutes.
15 minutes, so they'll get back over 15?
Sorry, my mother-in-law is grooming my dogs, and I gotta go pick them up. They just live next door, but anyway. So you take your chenille. This chenille does not have a right and wrong side. Some of them have a side that's flatter, and you might want to, you know, account for that as you're applying it. But you're just going to glue it down. One of the things I forgot to do is I typically keep a wet paper towel here when I'm doing this, and I forgot to get one of those this morning. The good news is the Aleene's dries absolutely clear. Here's my next little trick, if I can figure out what I did with it. Poopity. We have a crap ton of coffee stirrers in our house because my husband is a coffee addict. And I use those little coffee stirrers like I would have used it to spread that where I wanted it to go versus my fingers. But, you know, it is what it is right now. So I'm going to come around the corner. Continue to put my bead of Aleene's down. And I'll show you the one I did yesterday, and you'll see that the Aleene's is invisible. Of course, now that I've glued it to my finger, it's less easy. Stick to the pillow, not to me. Continue my bead of Aleene's down here. Leftover fast food napkins. Great for crafting cleanup. I stuck myself to it. Okay, I'm going to push it down, make sure that it's connected where I want it to be connected. You have to be careful on the corners. It tends to want to kind of roll to the back. Kind of roll it forward. And that's pretty much what I want that to look like. Now, tomorrow, after this is good and dry, I will come back and do some patching on it. But here we go. Here's where my join and my chenille is going to be. So I'm going to cut right there. And when this dries, you will never know that that's where it came together. So I know that using the glue is heresy for some people, but it works for me. It's easy, it's quick, and you know, this is not something, I don't consider these heirlooms. I'm sure that they're going to end up at Goodwill someday. And when people are paying 10 cents for them, I'm not going to care. But anyway, that's it. Oh, here's the one I did yesterday. I don't have any glaring spots where it didn't stick. If it doesn't, sometimes you'll come back and look at it and there's a spot where it's not connected well to the pillow. And at that point, that's where I use a dab of glue on the end of one of those coffee stirrers and kind of fill in and then press it down to where you want it to be. But anyway, I hope that was helpful to you guys. I know I went quick over a lot of it, but there are a wealth of other tutorials out there that are probably much better done. But I have still more pillows to finish. So anyway, you guys, I hope you have a great weekend. I hope that was helpful, and I look forward to seeing you again soon with a regular floss tube. Y'all have a great day. God bless.